The air in the private suite was so thick you could cut it with a $20 steak knife. Damien Stryker, a man who didn't just own rooms but entire buildings, was watching his billion-dollar deal collapse. His translator was gone, and his team was useless. The German delegation was insulted. As Damien's patience evaporated, nobody saw the waitress refilling the water. Nobody knew her secret. But when the German CEO stood up to leave, a quiet voice broke the silence. "He didn't ask about the profit margins," she said, in perfect fluent German. "He asked who you're firing. The Gilded Balthazar was more than an upscale restaurant. It was a quiet citadel of influence. Its secluded rooms, especially the famed Constellation Suite, had hosted the rise and fall of fortunes, the birth of alliances, and the discreet dissolution of business empires over $500 bottles of Chateau Margaux. For Wyatt Vance, however, it was nothing but a grueling job, one that barely scraped together enough to cover the interest on the debts her late mother had left behind. She stood near the service door, a silver tray balanced on one palm, listening as the atmosphere inside the suite slid from tense to disastrous. At the head of the mahogany table sat Damien Stryker, billionaire CEO of Aperture Global, a man known for cutting down competitors with the same ease he dismissed underperforming staff. His expression, already infamous for its severity, had soured into something bordering on volcanic. At his right was Marcus Thorne, the impeccably groomed COO, who was now visibly wilting inside a $5,000 Tom Ford suit. The rest of the Aperture team looked equally rattled. Across from them sat the Germans, representatives of the von Hesse Group, a Bavarian industrial dynasty. Their leader, Klaus Müller, wore his tailored suit like battle armor. His eyes, seasoned by both real and corporate wars, flicked with icy disappointment. Aperture's translator had failed to appear. 45 minutes late, unreachable, and rapidly becoming the cause of a multinational disaster. Damien's voice tightened. "Where is Peterson?" Marcus swallowed. "Voicemail, sir. We're trying to secure a remote translator, but the security protocol—" "Useless." Damien turned back to the Germans, and, with the misguided confidence of a monolingual American, repeated himself more slowly and loudly. "Herr Müller, we want the deal." Müller responded in rapid German, a detailed, blistering critique. When Marcus's translation app produced the phrase, "I am hungry for applesauce," Müller's contempt sharpened. That was when Wyatt's manager shoved her forward. "Water service, no eye contact," he hissed. Wyatt slipped inside, silent and efficient, refilling glasses as Damien muttered to Marcus, "We're negotiating for an entire robotics division, and we look like amateurs. Find Peterson, or find a new job." "Sir, I think—" Marcus began. "Shut up." Wyatt moved along the table, her face a neutral mask. She had trained herself to be nothing, to hear nothing. It was safer that way. The less she was perceived, the longer she kept her job. She reached the German side. Klaus Müller was speaking again, this time to his own team. His tone wasn't angry, it was resigned. "Es ist eine Beleidigung," Müller said quietly, his Hochdeutsch crisp and formal. "Sie respektieren uns nicht. Sie respektieren die Handwerkskunst nicht. Sie wollen nur unsere Patente plündern und unsere Ingenieure entlassen. It's an insult. They don't respect us. They don't respect the craftsmanship. They only want to plunder our patents and fire our engineers." Wyatt's hand, holding the heavy silver pitcher, did not tremble. But inside, her mind was racing. Plunder patents, fire engineers. That wasn't what the business papers had reported. The deal was pitched as a merger of equals. She reached Damien Stryker's side. He didn't even look at her as she refilled his glass. He was too busy glaring at Müller. "Look," Damien tried again. "This is simple. We pay you. You give us the company." He spread his hands wide. "What is not to understand?" Müller pushed his chair back and stood up. The entire German delegation stood with him. It was over. "This meeting," Müller said, in heavily accented, broken English, "is ended. Finished." Damien shot to his feet. "You can't just walk out. We have a signed LOI." Müller's younger associate spoke. "Herr Müller says, your disrespect is too big. We go." "No." Damien slammed his hand on the table. The water glasses jumped. "Marcus, get anyone in here who speaks a goddamn word of German. Now!" Marcus was pale. "Sir, in New York, on no notice?" "I don't care if you have to pull them out of a deli. Get me a translator." The room was silent, a standoff between American billions and German pride. The deal was dead. Damien's reputation was in tatters. Wyatt had finished the water service. She was standing by the service door, her shift technically over. She could walk away. She should walk away. This was not her problem. Her problem was the $4,200 in medical bills due on Friday. Klaus Müller and his team were walking toward the door. Damien looked murderous. Wyatt took one breath, and then she spoke. The words that left her lips were not in English. They were in the same precise, formal Hochdeutsch that Klaus Müller had been using. "Verzeihen Sie, Herrn Müller," Wyatt said, her voice clear and steady. It cut through the tension like a laser. Everyone froze. Müller and his delegation stopped halfway to the door. Damien Stryker, whose face had been a rictus of fury, simply blinked, his jaw slack. Marcus Thorne looked as if she had just sprouted a second head. Klaus Müller turned around, his expression unreadable. He looked not at Damien, but at the waitress. "Was haben Sie gesagt?" "What did you say?" Wyatt kept her hands clasped behind her back, her posture one of perfect service. But she met his gaze. "Ich sagte," she repeated. "Verzeihen Sie. Hat nicht verstanden, was Sie über die Ingenieure gesagt haben. Glaubt, Sie sprechen nur über Geld." I said, "Excuse me." "He didn't understand what you said about the engineers. He thinks you are only talking about money." A flicker of shock, then profound interest, passed over Müller's features. He stared at her, really stared at her, for the first time. He saw the cheap uniform, the worn shoes, but also the impossible, aristocratic fluency. "Und, wer sind Sie?" he asked. "And, who are you?" Damien Stryker finally found his voice. "What the hell is going on? What did she say?" Wyatt didn't look at Damien. She kept her focus on Müller, the man who held all the power. "My name is Wyatt Vance," she said to Müller in German. "I am a waitress here, and I believe you are making a mistake. And I believe he," she nodded almost imperceptibly at Damien, "is making an even bigger one." "Wyatt!" Her manager Julian was whispering frantically from the cracked service door. "Get out of there! You're fired!" She ignored him. Müller raised a hand to his team, signaling them to wait. He took a step back toward the table, his eyes locked on Wyatt. "You are very bold," he said in German, "for a waitress." "You are very forgiving," she replied, to have stayed this long while being so insulted. A shadow of a smile touched Müller's lips. It was gone in an instant. "Damien!" Marcus Thorne hissed, grabbing his boss's arm. "What is she doing? This is a security breach. We have no idea who she is. She could be corporate espionage." Damien shook him off. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the shift in power. The Germans had stopped. They were listening. To the waitress. "You!" Damien barked, pointing at Wyatt. "Come here." Wyatt turned her head slowly, finally looking at Damien Stryker. Her expression was no longer the blank mask of a servant. It was one of cool, detached intelligence. "What did you just say to them?" Damien demanded. I told them you were a fool, Wyatt said. The blood drained from Marcus's face. Damien's eyes widened, then narrowed. He was so shocked he couldn't even be angry. What? You're not, though, Wyatt continued, her voice quiet. You're just loud. You think a negotiation is a war. They think it's a marriage. You're demanding a prenup, and they're still deciding if they want to hold your hand. You're talking at them. Not with them. Who the hell are you? Damien whispered. She's the only one in this room who speaks their language. Sir, Wyatt said. Klaus Müller spoke up in German, his voice booming in the quiet room. Fräulein Vance, tell Mr. Stryker that if he is done shouting, I have one final question. If he can answer it, we will sit. If he cannot, we will leave. Wyatt translated, her eyes on Damien. Herr Müller has one final question. If you answer it to his satisfaction, he'll sit back down. Damien ran a hand through his hair. He looked at his own useless team. He looked at the German delegation, poised for flight. He looked at the waitress, who had just insulted him and, in the same breath, saved him. What's the question? He growled. Wyatt turned to Müller. Ist bereit. He is ready. Müller nodded. Fragen Sie ihn. Warum die von Hesse-Gruppe? Es gibt billigere Unternehmen. Es gibt einfachere Unternehmen. Warum wir? Was wissen Sie über unser Erbe, das über die Bilanzen hinausgeht? Ask him. Why the von Hesse Group? There are cheaper companies. There are simpler companies. Why us? What do you know about our heritage, beyond the balance sheets? Wyatt translated flawlessly, her tone neutral. He asks, why the von Hesse Group? He says there are cheaper, simpler companies. He wants to know what you know about their heritage, beyond the balance sheet. Damien was silent. It was a culture test, a purpose test. He was being asked to prove he wasn't just a plunderer. He looked at Marcus, who just shrugged helplessly. Damien looked at Wyatt. He saw her standing there, poised, intelligent. He saw the way Müller was watching her for the translation, not him. Tell him, Damien began. Tell him it's because of the LEO-7 robot. Wyatt's eyebrows shot up. She translated. Müller looked surprised. Das LEO-7? Tell him, Damien continued, gaining momentum, that the LEO-7 was the first automated surgical assistant. It was designed in 1998. It failed. It was a massive, expensive failure. Your company almost went bankrupt. But you didn't fire the engineering team. You doubled their funding, Wyatt translated, her own voice filling with a dawning respect. Müller's expression softened. Weiß das? He knows this. Tell him, Damien said, his voice lowering, that 3 years later, that same team created the harmonic scalpel technology that revolutionized modern surgery. You didn't care about the quarterly loss. You cared about the long-term vision. That's the heritage I'm buying. I'm not buying your patents, Herr Müller. I'm buying your patience. I'm buying the culture that created that team. Because my company, Aperture, we have the capital, but we've lost that. It was the most honest Wyatt had ever heard a billionaire be. She translated it all. She didn't just translate the words, she translated the confession. She used the formal sigh, but infused it with the personal respect Damien had finally, accidentally, shown. When she finished, there was a long, heavy silence. Klaus Müller looked at Damien Stryker. He looked at Wyatt. Then, slowly, he walked back to the table and sat down. Sagen Sie ihm, Müller said to Wyatt, dass wir von vorne anfangen werden, aber Sie bleiben. Tell him we will start over, but you stay. Damien looked at Wyatt. She nodded. He says we're starting over, and I stay. Julian! Damien roared toward the service door, without taking his eyes off Wyatt. This waitress is on my payroll now. Bring her whatever she wants. And a new suit. Wyatt held up a hand. There's no time, Mr. Stryker. We're already rude. She turned to the head of the table. She pulled out the chair between Damien Stryker and Marcus Thorne. She didn't sit in it. She stood behind it, like a general taking command of a war room. Now, Wyatt said, looking at both billionaires, let's talk about the engineers. The dynamic of the room had been shattered and reformed in a matter of minutes. Wyatt was no longer a ghost. She was the axis on which a multi-billion-dollar deal now turned. Marcus Thorne, the COO, looked at Wyatt with a toxic mix of disbelief and pure, unadulterated loathing. He had just been rendered obsolete by a woman in a $30 uniform. Mr. Stryker, if I may, Marcus interjected, his voice slick. This is highly irregular. We have no non-disclosure agreement with this person. She's a variable we can't control. She's the only variable that's working, Marcus, Damien snapped. So shut up and take notes. He gestured for Wyatt to begin. Wyatt took a deep breath. She was no longer waitressing. She was performing the most intense, linguistic and diplomatic tightrope act of her life. Muller, now comfortable, launched his first real salvo. Die vorgeschlagene Synergie in der Lieferkette ist absurd, Müller stated, his hands flat on the table. Ihre Logistik in Nordamerika ist effizient, aber sie ist rücksichtslos. Sie wird unsere Just-in-Time-Fertigung in Bayern zerstören. Es ist ein fundamentaler philosophischer Unterschied. The proposed supply chain synergy is absurd. Your North American logistics are efficient, but they are ruthless. It will destroy our just-in-time manufacturing in Bavaria. It is a fundamental philosophical difference. The old Wyatt would have translated this verbatim. But the new Wyatt, the Wyatt who was now the only thing holding this deal together, listened, processed, and refined. Herr Müller, she said, turning to Damien, has foundational concerns about the supply chain integration. He finds your North American model to be ruthless, his word, and he's worried it will break his manufacturing philosophy in Bavaria, which relies on a just-in-time model. He sees it as a philosophical conflict. Philosophical, Damien scoffed. It's cargo, it's numbers. Tell him his philosophy is costing him 14% on the bottom line. Our model will optimize that. Wyatt turned back to Muller. She did not say, your philosophy is costing you money. Herr Müller, she said in German, Mr. Stryker deeply respects the precision of your Bavarian model. He recognizes its just-in-time nature as a marvel of efficiency. Müller nodded, pleased. Damien looked confused. However, Wyatt continued, he is concerned that its current structure is vulnerable to global shipping disruptions, as we've seen recently. His ruthless model, as you call it, is designed for one thing, resilience. He doesn't want to replace your system. He wants to harden it. He proposes using Aperture's logistical network as a strategic reserve for your key components, not as a replacement for your methods. Miller's eyes widened. This was new. Ein strategisches Reservelager? A strategic reserve? Genau, Wyatt said. Exactly. Müller mulled this over, pulling at his chin. Das ist nicht das, was im Entwurf stand. That is not what was in the proposal. It's not, Damien said, catching on. It's a new idea. But I like it. Tell him I like it. A strategic reserve. It protects his philosophy and my resilience, Wyatt translated. A problem that had been a brick wall for 2 hours was suddenly a new, collaborative opportunity. Marcus Thorne was scribbling furiously, his face grim. He had proposed the original ruthless integration. He had just been outmaneuvered by the waitress. They continued, point by point. The negotiation was a minefield. Damien's style was to attack, to demand. Muller's was to defend, to protect his heritage. Wyatt acted as the perfect, brilliant buffer. When Damien said, "The redundancy in his R&D department is insane. I'm cutting 30%. Wyatt translated, "Mr. Stryker is incredibly impressed by the depth of your R&D talent. He wants to know how you would feel about creating a blue sky innovation lab where your most brilliant, redundant engineers would be free to pursue next-generation projects, completely insulated from quarterly pressures." When Müller said, "He will never have creative control. The von Hesse name remains on the board." Wyatt translated, "Herr Müller affirms that the core identity and brand heritage, represented by the von Hesse name, must be the guiding star for all future creative endeavors, ensuring a seamless partnership with Aperture's board." She wasn't just translating. She was transmuting. She was taking Damien's lead and Müller's iron and forging a bridge. With every successful exchange, a small piece of Damien's arrogance chipped away, replaced by a new, unfamiliar feeling, awe. He watched her. He watched the way her posture changed when she spoke German, becoming more rigid, more formal. He watched her hands, which she used sparingly to emphasize complex technical points. He watched the way Klaus Müller, a man who had made prime ministers wilt, now looked to her for approval. Where did she come from? The answer to that question came in the middle of a heated discussion about non-compete clauses for key executives. "Es ist nicht verhandelbar," Müller insisted. "Unsere Top-Ingenieure, sie sind wie eine Familie. Sie können sie nicht mit goldenen Handschellen fesseln." "It is non-negotiable. Our top engineers, they are like family. You cannot trap them with golden handcuffs." "Family is family, but a contract is a contract," Damien countered. "I'm investing billions. I'm not going to let a rival, like Heiss Kruger, poach them a year later." The moment Damien said the name, Heiss Kruger, Müller's associate, the younger, sharper man, stiffened. Wyatt paused. She looked at the associate. "Something is wrong." Damien stopped. "What?" "Herr Müller," Wyatt said in German. "Your colleague. He reacted to the name Heiss Kruger." Müller looked at his associate, who flushed. "Es ist nichts." "It's nothing." "It's not nothing," Wyatt said softly. "You're afraid of them. But Mr. Stryker isn't threatening you with them. He's worried about them." Damien, watching this exchange, felt a cold knot in his stomach. He was being shut out again. "Wyatt, what's happening?" "I'm not sure," Wyatt said. "There's something else going on. A subplot." "Then find out," Damien ordered. Wyatt turned back to Müller. "Herr Müller, this deal is stalling. Not because of logistics, not because of R&D, but because of fear. I think you're not just selling a company. You're trying to save it." This was a massive gamble. She had just stepped from translator to therapist. Klaus Müller stared at her. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. The room was silent. "Das Mädchen ist klug," he said to his associate. "The girl is smart." He looked at Damien. "Heiss Kruger," he said in English, the name tasting like ash in his mouth. "They want us, but they want to destroy us, to break us. They are Raubtiere, predators. They're trying a hostile takeover," Wyatt translated, her eyes wide. "That's why you're here. You're not just considering Aperture. You're fleeing to Aperture. You need a white knight." Damien Stryker and Klaus Müller locked eyes. The pretense was gone. "Heiss Kruger," Damien said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. "I hate those guys." He looked at Wyatt. "Tell him the price just went down. We're not buying his company." Müller looked horrified. "Was?" "Tell him," Damien said, leaning forward. "We are partnering with him. And together, we are going to burn Heiss Kruger to the ground." Wyatt translated. And for the first time that day, Klaus Müller smiled. "Now," Damien said, "let's take a 20-minute recess. I need a new proposal drawn up, and," he looked at Wyatt, "I need to know who you are, and I need to know what happened to my original translator." The Germans retreated to a separate caucus room to discuss the radical new partnership proposal. This left Damien, a fuming Marcus Thorne, and the enigmatic Wyatt alone in the Constellation suite. Damien immediately unclipped his phone from his belt and punched a number. "Smith! Report! Now!" He turned to Wyatt, his eyes narrowed. "You have 60 seconds. Who are you? Where did you learn to speak like that? And why are you a waitress?" "My name is Wyatt Vance," she said, her adrenaline starting to fade, replaced by exhaustion. "My mother was American. My father was German. I grew up speaking both. I studied comparative linguistics and literature at Heidelberg University." Heidelberg? Damien was stunned. That was Germany's Ivy League. What happened?" Wyatt looked down at her hands, the first sign of vulnerability she'd shown. "My mother got sick. Very sick. The experimental treatments weren't covered. I left my doctoral program to come home and take care of her. When she died, she left a staggering amount of debt. The Gilded Balthazar pays cash, and it pays weekly. It was the only job I could get that paid fast enough." Damien was quiet, processing this. A PhD candidate from Heidelberg, fluent in 2 languages and high-level corporate strategy, was serving him water. "And the negotiation?" he asked, his voice softer. "How did you know what to say?" "I read," Wyatt said simply. "While I was at Heidelberg, I paid for my books by translating business journals, Wirtschaftswoche, the Financial Times Deutschland. I read about Aperture. I read about von Hesse. I read your white papers. I'm a fast study." Before Damien could respond, his phone buzzed. He put it on speaker. "Smith, talk." A crisp, no-nonsense female voice came through. "Peterson is located, sir. He's at the Tipsy Pig pub in the village, highly intoxicated. He's been there since 10 a.m. "He just got drunk?" Damien asked, skeptical. "No, sir," Smith replied. "He didn't just get drunk. He was paid to. We accessed his bank records. A wire transfer for $50,000 hit his account at 9:05 a.m. this morning. The source is a firewalled shell corporation based in the Cayman Islands." A cold silence filled the room. This wasn't an accident. It was sabotage. 50 grand to miss a meeting, Damien mused, his voice like ice. Someone really didn't want this deal to happen. "Smith, trace that shell corp. I want a name." "Already on it, sir. But there's more. I checked Mr. Peterson's phone logs, cross-referencing with your executive team." "And?" "He had a 15-minute call last night," Smith said, "with Marcus Thorne." Wyatt's head snapped up. She looked at Marcus. He was standing by the window, his back to them, but she could see the rigid line of his shoulders. He had gone completely still. "Marcus?" Damien said, his voice deceptively calm. "Is that true? Did you speak to our translator last night?" Marcus turned around. His slick, polished veneer was gone. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a trapped animal's panic. "Damien, it was just a final confirmation, to make sure he was prepared." "Smith," Damien said, his eyes never leaving his COO. "What else?" "The Shell Corporation, sir." Smith's voice was grim. "It's firewalled, but the registration agent. It's the same agent used by Heiss Kruger for their last 5 North American acquisitions." The air left the room. "Oh, Marcus," Damien whispered. "No," Marcus shouted, lunging forward. "It's a lie. It's a setup. They're framing me." "Framing you?" Damien asked, his voice dropping to a predatory growl. "Heiss Kruger, the exact company you've been pushing us to partner with in Europe for 6 months. The exact company that benefits if this von Hesse deal goes up in flames. You didn't just talk to Peterson, you paid him off. You sabotaged me." You can't prove that," Marcus stammered. "I don't need to," Damien said. He clicked his phone. "Smith, lock down Mr. Thorne's accounts, all of them. Seize his laptop, his keycard, and his digital access. And have 2 security guards meet me at the Constellation suite. He's trespassing." "Damien, you can't!" Marcus pleaded, his arrogance collapsing into desperation. "I've given you 20 years. I built this company with you. And you tried to sell it to our worst enemy for... what? A promotion? A bigger cut?" Damien looked at him with pure contempt. "You're a fool, Marcus. You didn't just bet against me. You bet against her." He pointed to Wyatt. Marcus looked at Wyatt, his eyes burning with a hatred so profound it made her flinch. You waitress. You did this. You ruined everything." He took a step toward her, his hand raised. Damien moved faster than Wyatt thought possible. He grabbed Marcus by the front of his expensive suit, slamming him back against the wall. "Don't you ever!" Damien hissed, his face inches from Marcus's. "Touch my translator." The doors burst open, and 2 massive security guards entered. "Mr. Thorne," Damien said, straightening his tie as he stepped back. "It appears your services are no longer required. Escort him out. Of the building. And my life." Marcus didn't say another word. His face was a mask of ruined ambition. The guards took him by the arms, and he was gone. The room was quiet again. Damien fixed his cuffs. He looked at Wyatt, who was staring at the door, her heart hammering. "Well," Damien said, picking up his water glass. "That was dramatic." He took a sip. "Now, back to work. I believe we have a partnership to draft." Wyatt looked at him, stunned. "Just like that?" "Just like that," Damien said. "Traitors are dealt with. Business continues. Now, I need you to do something for me." "What?" "Stop standing by the wall," he said, pulling out the chair at his right hand, the one Marcus had occupied. "Sit down. You're not a waitress anymore. You're my new senior advisor." Wyatt looked at the chair. It was a $10,000 leather chair at the table of one of the most powerful men in the world. She slowly walked over and sat down. It was, she noted, surprisingly comfortable. "Good," Damien smiled. "Now, what's the German word for screwed?" The Germans returned, their faces visibly more relaxed. The partnership proposal had clearly been well received. Klaus Müller sat down and gave a curt nod. "Herr Stryker," Müller began, and Wyatt was about to translate when Müller held up a hand. "Nein," he said, looking at Wyatt. "Von nun an. Sprechen wir Englisch. Es ist fairer. No, from now on, we speak English. It is fairer." Damien raised an eyebrow. "I'm impressed." "I am. Old, Mr. Stryker. Not stupid," Müller said, his English slow but precise. "My ear has returned. Your new advisor. She is very good. She makes me sound like a poet." "She has that effect," Damien said, glancing at Wyatt with a small smile. "So the new proposal," Müller continued, "a joint venture. Aperture provides the capital and the North American logistics. Von Hesse provides the engineering and the European manufacturing. 50-50 split, and we launch a neuer Zweig, a new branch, to destroy Heiss Kruger. I like it," Damien said. "But 50-50 is a problem. I'm putting in more capital. I want 51%. Nein?" Müller said, his good humor vanishing. 50-50, or no deal. The von Hesse name. It is not for sale. It must be equal." "Damien," Wyatt said, leaning in. "Don't This isn't about the 1%. It's about his pride. It's about the marriage you talked about. You can't be the senior partner in a marriage. Damien gritted his teeth. Giving up control was not in his DNA. Fine, 50-50. But I want one last concession, a symbolic one. Symbolic? Miller asked, suspicious. This legacy clause, Damien said, tapping the original proposal. Page 48, Appendix C, the Eleonora von Hesse Arts Trust. It's a defunct arts foundation from the 1980s. My lawyers say it's just a shell. I want it dissolved. It complicates the new corporate structure. The moment the words left his mouth, Wyatt's blood ran cold. She looked at the paper. The Eleonora von Hesse Arts Trust. She hadn't just heard that name. It was her name. She was Wyatt. Her grandmother, the one she'd never met, was Eleonora. Muller, who had been amicable, suddenly went rigid. His face became a stone mask. This shell, as you call it, Miller said, his voice dropping an octave, is not symbolic, and it is nicht verhandelbar. It is non-negotiable. Why? Damien pushed, annoyed. It's a dead asset. It holds nothing but a small schloss in the Black Forest. Wyatt felt the room tilt. A small schloss. Her father used to tell her bedtime stories about the summer castle, the place he was forbidden to return to. Damien, stop, Wyatt whispered, but her voice was drowned out. It's inefficient, Klaus, Damien argued. Let it go. We're building the future, not a museum. You do not understand, Miller said, his hands clenching. The trust is the heritage. It is the soul. It cannot be sold. It cannot be touched. Then the deal is dead, Damien said, bluffing. So say es, Miller said, standing up. So be it. No! Wyatt's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. Both men, shocked, stared at her. She was shaking, not from fear, but from a revelation so profound it was rewriting her entire life. She looked at Klaus Müller, not as a CEO, but as a memory. A vague, shadowy memory from a photograph her father kept hidden in a shoebox. A younger man, standing next to a stern-looking old man. Klaus, she said, her voice trembling. Klaus Müller, from the Schwarzwald. Müller froze. His face went from pale to ashen. He looked at her, as if he was seeing a ghost. What did you say? He asked. The Eleonora Trust, Wyatt said, her mind racing, piecing together decades of fragmented stories. It's not an arts trust, not really. It was my grandmother's escape. It's where she hid her paintings, the ones my grandfather, the Baron, disapproved of. Damien was completely lost. Wyatt, what are you talking about? Muller ignored Damien. He walked around the table until he was standing directly in front of Wyatt's chair. He stared down at her, his eyes searching her face. Who are you? He whispered, this time in German, his voice cracking. Bist du wirklich? Wyatt stood up so she was eye to eye with him. Ich bin Wyatt, she said, her own German now laced with a faint, long-buried Swabian accent. The accent of the Black Forest. Ich bin die Tochter von Friedrich, der Sohn, den verstoßen hat. I am Wyatt. I am the daughter of Friedrich, the son he disowned. Klaus Müller's hand flew to his mouth. He staggered back. Mein Gott, he breathed. Friedrich's kind? Wyatt, Eleonora. You are named for her. What is going on? Damien demanded, standing up. Someone talk to me. He knew my father, Wyatt said, tears welling in her eyes as she looked at Damien. My father was Friedrich von Hesse, the only son of Baron Wilhelm von Hesse. He was disowned, cast out, for marrying my mother. An American, she turned back to Klaus, You were his Vertrauter, his right-hand man. I was, Klaus said, his composure completely gone. He was no longer a CEO. He was an old man, witnessing a miracle. Your grandfather, the Baron. He is dying, Wyatt. The words hit her like a physical blow. He is dying, Klaus repeated. And his only regret, his only one, is what he did to Friedrich. He has spent 20 years looking for you. He hired me to find you. You knew? Wyatt choked out. No, Klaus insisted. We knew Friedrich had a child. We knew he was in New York, but he changed his name. Vance, from Hesse Vance. Oh, we are fools. We never made the connection. This deal, this merger with Aperture, it was a white knight deal, yes. But it was also a way to get our people on the ground in New York. A final, desperate attempt to find you. Damien sank back into his chair. He was the CEO of Aperture Global. He was a master of the universe, and he had just become a bit player in a 20th century family drama. The Eleonora Trust, Wyatt said, understanding. It wasn't a negotiating point. It was a test. Yes, Klaus affirmed. Your grandfather, he said only a true heir, only Friedrich's child, would understand its meaning. He said any plunderer would try to dissolve it. Damien looked at the paper. He looked at Wyatt. I'm the plunderer. You were, Wyatt said, wiping her eyes. But you're not now. Klaus Müller put a heavy, trembling hand on Wyatt's shoulder. Fräulein, Baroness, Wyatt, your grandfather is dying, and you are the last of the von Hesse line. This company, it is yours. The silence that followed Klaus Müller's proclamation was absolute. Wyatt looked at the old German, at the stunned billionaire, and at the half-eaten pastries on the service tray. Her world had been turned inside out. She wasn't Wyatt Vance, waitress. She was Wyatt von Hesse Vance, heiress to an industrial empire. Mine? She finally said. I don't understand. My father told me he was disowned, that the line was broken. Broken, Klaus said, but not ended. The Baron is a hard man, Wyatt, a man of iron and tradition, but in his heart, he is broken. He wants to see you, before it is too late. Damien, who had been uncharacteristically silent, finally spoke. So, this whole thing, this merger, was a romantic, last-ditch effort to find a lost princess? Do not mock what you do not understand, Mr. Stryker, Klaus said, his dignity returning. It was a business decision, and a personal one. The von Hesse Group needs a leader. It needs a von Hesse, and it needs an ally against Heiss Kruger. We came here looking for an heir or a partner. By the grace of God, it seems we have found both, in the same person. All eyes turned to Wyatt. She felt dizzy, the weight of a new, unimaginable life settling onto her shoulders. The sabotage, she said suddenly, her mind sharp as ever. Marcus, Heiss Kruger. They didn't just want to stop the deal. They wanted to stop you. They must have known you were looking for an heir. They wanted von Hesse to be leaderless, so they could poach the engineers and take over the company. They wanted, Damien said, his eyes cold, to snuff out the bloodline. Literally, in a corporate sense. He stood up, a new energy in his step. The deal-maker was back. This changes everything, he said. It does, Wyatt agreed. She looked at Klaus. Herr Müller. Klaus, I am not the Baroness you are looking for. I am my mother's daughter. I am an American. I am a waitress with $4,200 in medical debt. The debt is a nichts, a nothing, Klaus said, waving his hand dismissively. We can— No, Wyatt said, cutting him off. You don't understand. I won't be found. I won't step into a role I haven't earned. My father ran from that life. I won't be dragged back into it. But your heritage, Klaus protested. My heritage, Wyatt said, is speaking 2 languages. It's understanding both sides. It's what I did in this room for the last 3 hours. Damien Stryker smiled. He had been waiting for this. She's right, Klaus, Damien said. You didn't find a lost princess. You found a CEO. He turned to Wyatt. And as your new senior advisor, a title that is suddenly laughably inadequate, I'm advising you to stop thinking like a waitress. You hold all the cards, Wyatt. What? What do you mean? She asked. I mean, Damien said, grabbing a fresh piece of paper and a pen. This deal is no longer 50-50, and it's not a partnership between Aperture and von Hesse. He scribbled on the paper. It is a new entity, he declared. We will call it Aperture Hesse Global, a new holding company. It will absorb 100% of the von Hesse Group and 100% of Aperture's European operations. We will fund it with capital from Aperture, and we will protect it with the von Hesse legacy. We will destroy Heiss-Kruger. We will own the future. A new company, Klaus murmured, intrigued. But who, Wyatt asked, will run it? Damien looked at her, his expression one of pure, unadulterated respect. Not me, and not you. He turned to Klaus. Tell the Baron that his company is safe, that his granddaughter is safe, and that the new entity, Aperture Hesse Global, will be co-chaired by 2 people. He pushed the paper across the table. Klaus Müller, representing the von Hesse heritage, and Damien Stryker, representing Aperture. Wyatt was confused. But what about me? You said, I'm co-chairman, Wyatt, Damien said. I'm not the CEO. Chairmen are symbolic. They guide. They plot. They don't run things. He pointed to a blank line he had drawn at the top of the page. This new company, Damien said, needs a chief executive officer. Someone who understands both sides. Someone who speaks the language of German heritage and American resilience. Someone who can read a balance sheet and stop a hostile takeover. Someone who can bridge both worlds. He slid the pen over to her. The new deal, Damien said, is that you, Wyatt von Hesse-Vance, are named CEO of Aperture Hesse Global, effective immediately. Your salary, he paused, will be more than enough to cover your debts, and your first act will be to sign this merger. Wyatt looked at the blank line. She looked at Damien, who was grinning like a pirate who had just found a new map. She looked at Klaus, who was watching her with tears in his eyes, a look of profound, paternal pride. She thought of her mother. She thought of the years of struggle. She thought of the humiliation of the morning, and the terror, and the strange, electric thrill of the negotiation. I have one condition, Wyatt said. Damien's smile faltered. Name it. The Eleonora von Hesse Arts Trust, Wyatt said. It will not be dissolved. It will be the guiding principle of the new company. We won't just harden the supply chain. We won't just innovate in R&D. We will invest in the people, in the family, in the craftsmanship. The heritage isn't just a name, Klaus. It's a promise. Klaus Müller nodded, unable to speak. Good, Wyatt said. She picked up the pen. Now, where do I sign? The signing of the Aperture Hesse Global merger, which took place 3 days later, was a masterclass in corporate theatre. The original setting, the gilded Balthazar's Constellation Suite, had been a pressure cooker of wood-panelled desperation. This new setting, the 50th floor boardroom of Aperture Global, was a high-altitude fortress of glass and steel, overlooking Central Park like a kingdom. Wyatt von Hesse-Vance stood at the head of the massive obsidian table. The chair, a marvel of ergonomic design, had been Damien's. He now sat, not as her boss, but as her co-chairman, to her right, his expression an unreadable, proprietary smirk. To her left sat Klaus Müller, who looked as if he was witnessing a state visit, his posture rigid with pride. Lining the rest of the table were the Aperture VPs, the old guard. They were the men, and they were all men, who had survived Damien's ruthless, scorched earth style. They now looked at Wyatt, in her immaculately tailored charcoal grey suit, with a palpable, vibrating mixture of suspicion, curiosity, and fear. The press release had been vague, labeling her a linguistics prodigy from Heidelberg and a long-lost strategic consultant, which was, in its own way, entirely true. The waitress part, by unspoken agreement, had been scrubbed from the official record. And finally, the corporate lawyer droned, the signature of the new chief executive officer. He slid the final document, a heavy vellum bond, in front of Wyatt. The pen was a heavy, sterling silver instrument. Wyatt picked it up. Her hand did not shake. She remembered, just 72 hours ago, her hands shaking so badly she could barely pour water. She remembered the coarse, cheap polyester of her uniform, now replaced by the soft, structured wool of her suit. She signed. Not Wyatt Vance. She wrote in a clear, steady hand, Wyatt von Hesse-Vance. Damien's smirk widened. He tapped his own pen. And with that, I believe we are concluded. Gentlemen, he said, his voice booming in the sterile room, meet your new CEO. The VPs clapped, a perfunctory, polite sound. As the meeting broke, one of them, a man named Reynolds with a polished silver fox look, approached her. He was the VP of Global Logistics, the very man whose ruthless model she had, as a translator, disparaged. Miss Vance, Reynolds said, his smile not reaching his eyes. No, just one conventional ascent to the top. I must admit, in all my years, I've never seen anything quite like it. It was a test, a subtle sharp jab to see if she would bleed. Wyatt did not smile back. Mr. Reynolds, you'll find I'm unconventional in all the most effective ways. I've read your Q3 projections. Your ruthless model is optimized for speed, but it's bleeding us dry in customs duties and vulnerability to shipping disruptions. Reynolds' smile vanished. It is, she continued, inefficient. I expect a full brief on my desk by Monday, with 3 alternative resilience models, as we discussed in the German negotiations. I trust you were taking notes. The man's face paled. He had just been put on notice by the prodigy. Yes, of course, Miss Vance. CIO. Good, she said, dismissing him. I'll see you Monday. Reynolds retreated, his confidence visibly shattered. Damien, who had watched the entire exchange, let out a low chuckle. You learn fast, Baroness. Don't call me that, Wyatt said, turning to the window. The room was empty, save for them and Klaus. And I already knew his model was flawed. I'm just in a position to fix it now. Klaus stepped forward, his face etched with a new, urgent kindness. The von Hesse jet is fueled and waiting at Teterboro, Wyatt. The Baron, he is stable, but he is asking for you. Wyatt nodded, the weight of her next, more personal negotiation settling on her. I'll be there in an hour. Klaus bowed, a gesture that still sent a jolt of unreality through her, and left to make the final arrangements. She was alone with Damien, the two of them looking down at the city. So, Damien said, sipping a coffee he had poured himself. CEO, first day. You've already terrified my VP of logistics. He'll live, she said. Heiss Kruger. Tell me about the war. Damien's expression darkened. The war has already begun. Marcus Thorne wasn't just a traitor. He was a symptom. Heiss Kruger has been trying to poach von Hesse talent for years. They knew the Baron was ill, They knew he was searching for an heir. This wasn't just corporate sabotage, Wyatt. This was dynastic. He faced her. You are the CEO. You are the builder. Your job is to take the von Hesse heritage and the Aperture resilience and forge them into a company that can't be broken. You are the public face, the diplomat, the leader. And you? She asked. The co-chairman? What's your job? I'm the co-chairman, he said, a cold, predatory light in his eyes. I don't build. I hunt. I'm going to find every single mole, every back-channel deal, every planted executive that Heiss Kruger has in either of our companies. I'm going to rip them out, root and stem. You are the future, Wyatt. I'm the man who makes sure you get there. He handed her a slim, elegant file. One last thing. She opened it. It was the final, itemized, paid-in-full receipt for her mother's staggering medical debts. I don't understand, she whispered. It was paid an hour ago, Damien said. From your new signing bonus, of course. We couldn't have the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation in collections, could we? A clean slate, Wyatt, in every way. She looked at the paper, the numbers that had haunted her sleep for 2 years, now just ink. Thank you, Damien. Don't thank me, he said. You earned it. Now go. Settle the past. The future can wait until Monday. The flight to the Black Forest was a surreal dream. She, who had recently budgeted her bus fare, was now the sole passenger in a Gulfstream G700. A flight attendant, who seemed to materialize from nowhere, quietly refilled a glass of sparkling water she hadn't asked for. Klaus, who had joined her for the journey, sat opposite, reading a thick financial report, leaving her to her thoughts. This was the journey her father, Friedrich, had made in reverse, fleeing a life of privilege for a life of love, and ultimately, poverty. Now she was returning, armed with the very things her family had rejected: an American's pragmatism, a commoner's grit, and 51% of a new global entity. The Schloss, when they arrived, was not the fairy tale castle of her father's stories. It was an imposing, almost severe, stone fortress, covered in a light dusting of new snow. The staff was lined up at the entrance. As she stepped out of the black Mercedes, they bowed as one. "Willkommen daheim, Baroness," the eldest, the Hausverwalter, said. "Bitte," Wyatt said, her German automatic. "Just Wyatt. For now." Klaus led her through grand, cold hallways that smelled of old wood, floor polish, and something medicinal. He stopped at a pair of large oak doors. "He is in the study. He is frail, Wyatt. But his mind, it is as sharp as it ever was." She entered alone. Baron Wilhelm von Hesse was not the iron-fisted tyrant she had imagined. He was a shockingly frail man, engulfed in a massive wheelchair, a thick wool blanket pooled in his lap. An oxygen tube snaked beneath his nose. But his eyes were the ones she had seen in her father's only photograph. Sharp, intelligent, and utterly unforgiving. He dismissed the nurse with a curt wave. For a full minute, they just stared at each other. "Du hast die Augen deiner Großmutter," he finally rasped, his voice a dry whisper. "You have your grandmother's eyes." "And my mother's stubbornness, I am told," Wyatt replied in perfect, formal German. A flicker of something. Not anger. Surprise. "Du sprichst, Gott." You speak. Well. "I had to," she said. "It was the only way to hear my father's stories. The ones about the man who broke his heart." The Baron flinched, the first crack in the iron facade. "He was a fool," the Baron whispered. "He chose that woman. He chose love," Wyatt shot back, her voice low and dangerous. The CEO was gone, replaced by the daughter. "He chose a life. You were the one who made him choose. You, with your heritage and your tradition. You drove him away. You let him die in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens while you sat here, in this museum, counting your regrets. The old man was shaking, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Silent, angry tears streamed down his paper-thin cheeks. He wrote, the Baron choked out, fumbling for a drawer. Every year, on my birthday, I never wrote back. He pulled out a worn photograph. It was her father, young, vibrant, standing next to a smiling American woman. Her mother. Ich war der Dummkopf. I was the fool. Wyatt's own anger evaporated, replaced by a profound, hollowing sadness. This was it. The great, terrible dragon of her past was just a lonely, dying old man. Yes, she said, her voice softening. You were. And he's gone. And I'm all that's left. He reached a trembling, liver-spotted hand toward her. Wyatt, mankind, my child, can an old man be forgiven? She looked at his hand, the hand that had signed her father's disownment. She took it. It was cold. I don't know if I can forgive you for him, she said honestly, but I can be here, now, for me, and for the company. He breathed, a shadow of a smile. The company. Aperture Hesse. Klaus told me. The CEO. He chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. A woman, running it all. Your grandmother, Eleonora. She would have loved that. She was a rebel, too. I know, Wyatt said. I read her trust documents. That's why I saved it. The heritage. Gut, the Baron said, his eyes closing. Gut. Es ist sicher. It is safe. Wyatt sat with him for another hour, telling him not of the debt, but of the negotiations. Not of her fear, but of her strategy. She watched as the regret in his eyes was slowly replaced by a new, unfamiliar look. Pride. When she left the study, Klaus was waiting. He is peaceful, she said. You have given him his final gift, Klaus said. Wyatt walked to the grand terrace, a cold wind whipping her hair. The $4,200 debt was gone. The family's curse was broken. The past was finally settled. Her phone buzzed. It was a secure text from Damien. Welcome to the family, Baroness. Now get back to work. Heiss Kruger just tried to poach our new head of R&D. A sharp, fierce smile touched Wyatt's lips. She looked out at the dark, snow-covered forest of her ancestors. It was her forest. This was her company. She typed a reply. I'm on my way. And Damien, call me CEO. She turned, her suit jacket catching the wind, and walked back into the Schloss. Not as a waitress, not as an heir, but as a queen, ready for her war. And so, Wyatt Vance walked out of one life and into another. She proved that the most powerful person in the room isn't always the one with the loudest voice, but the one who understands. Her past didn't define her. It armed her. She went from serving billionaires to leading them, all because she saw a bridge where everyone else saw a wall. This story is a powerful reminder that your greatest skills might be hidden, just waiting for the right, high-stakes moment to be revealed. Don't wait to be asked. What did you think of Wyatt's incredible transformation? Which twist surprised you the most? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of hidden talent and dramatic reveals, please hit that like button, share it with a friend who needs a little inspiration, and don't forget to subscribe.